Got it. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning Commission meeting.
What time is it?
What, Sharon?
Time?
6:04.
6:04, okay. And before we get started, I would like to welcome Kent Johnson, new town planner, first meeting with us.
Thank you. Nice to meet you. Nice meeting you.
We have a sketch plan, continued sketch plan, a preliminary plan, and then we've got some other business to describe at the end. So we have an amendments to the agenda. Under the sketch plan, they've added to the agenda is agent for the landowner Alan French. Item 3 under the preliminary plan, it is at the end of that description is and scenic resource protection overlay SRPO zones. And at the end, other business, we have a brief discussion on bylaw modernization grant project. And then Catherine Sonic will give us an update on town charter discussion. So with that, before we open the floor for public hearing or public comments, I would like anyone who's going to be participating either in person or online to please swear that any testimony you present this evening will be truthful to the best of your abilities. If you're going to say a word, please just say yes. Online? It'd be good to hear you if we've got people on.
We don't have anybody on.
Nobody on, just commissioners?
Yeah. And then just a reminder for their name when they talk.
Okay.
Name and address.
So thank you, Sharon. When you do speak this evening, please just let us know your name before you begin so that Sharon can make that part of the minutes. We have on virtual this evening, we have Commissioners Mangan, Raphael. Is Tom or Josh on this?
Yes,
Both of them are on, so
Full
Commissioner Furland and Commissioner Knox. With Davis, Schumacher, and Brusso in the room. So we have a full slate this evening. So first item we have is public comment. That is an opportunity for anyone to give us comments on items that are not on the agenda, since we don't have any consent agenda items this evening. Asking if there are any, I would open the floor. Seeing none. Anything online? Let's move on. Well, it's commissioners online, so first item on the agenda tonight is a sketch plan. This is a continued public hearing from September 8th. This is a proposal for a conventional 9-unit residential subdivision located at 60 Colonel Page Road. Catherine, would you like to give us an overview on this?
I will. Yep, I will give a quick little run through. So just a little reminder that you first heard this application at Sketch Plan in September, and then you followed up with a site visit after that. And your concerns at the time was mainly about the layout and wondering if there could be a better layout that would maybe cluster, have less road. And I think that was mainly it. So after actually at the site visit, we did see an alternative proposal, and that is what was submitted for this sketch plan. So the access, instead of being off of Colonel Page Road, is now on Chapin Road, and the lots are clustered a bit more around that road there. The other changes that we see is that the stormwater for the majority is being collected in the cul-de-sac in the middle, as suggested by Public Works at the first sketch plan hearing. We also see that they have changed, instead of doing on-site wells, to hook up to the town water, which has already actually been reviewed, and the town has the ability to serve this development. So that is good. There's questions still about the boundaries of the flood hazard area. The applicant has stated that what is shown on the maps is incorrect, and so they intend on trying to get that boundary adjusted, and that is through a LOMA process with FEMA. So a letter of map amendment is what LOMA stands for. So as far as any outstanding issues. This is sketch, so there's not a lot of technical work that's done, but so we will see much more of that at the next phase of review. So they'll continue to work on roadway design, water, wastewater, stormwater, that flood hazard area question as well. So as far as the staff notes go, there are a couple corrections that I just wanted to point out. So I think the first one is a typo that it's supposed to be, it's like, let's see, line 336. It's not greased, it should be grassed roadway swim. And this one actually shows up, I think this other one, 2 places. In the Public Works comments on page 7, but it's line 253. It describes it as a minimum length requirement of 900 feet for the road. It should be a maximum. So that was just a typo by Public Works, but it also got carried through to a condition on line 399. So we should change that minimum to maximum.
Probably went along with the greased roadway. Right?
Yeah, it did. Slid right down. Make it a little longer. Yeah, so I think that's all I wanted to point out.
Commissioners, any questions for staff at this point?
Yes. Does that mean we're not getting 1,000-foot greased road?
Maybe a
Otherwise, okay. Otherwise, I'm good.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. John, comments, questions?
Yes, John Stewart. Just to add to what Catherine's outlined, the plan has been updated. The road is, as indicated, takes off from Chapin Road. It was shortened from what was represented at the September 28th site visit. So now it's about 565 feet to the beginning of the cul-de-sac, which is a one-way road around the cul-de-sac, and it's about 150 feet in diameter. We have the detention basin, as mentioned. The wetlands delineation was completed after the site visit and has now been confirmed by A&R. So what you see on the plan now is that's the final configuration of wetlands and setbacks. We have added building envelopes. The LOMR, which is a revision as opposed to an amendment, is expected on the 16th of December. So just a short while. We added a trail along the southern property line to connect with the previously shown multi-purpose trail, which sort of parallels Alder Brook. So that was added subsequent to our site visit. Municipal water now shown, and basically that's that sums up the changes that have been made to what you see on the plan before you tonight.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioners, questions for the applicant? Josh?
I'm good. Thank you.
John?
I do not have any questions. Thank you.
Tom?
I'm all set.
David?
I'm good, thank you.
Patty?
Is I know on your old map, the proposed stormwater retention pond was way up in the corner. Did we scrap that and just put it in the middle of the cul-de-sac?
That's correct.
Okay.
John?
No, I'm good.
And I'm good as well. So at this point, the public hearing is open. Sharon, you mentioned somebody.
Somebody just signed on. We need a name, and you need to provide the oath to them if they're going to speak.
So whoever just joined us, You could state your name for the record, please.
You'll need to unmute yourself. Oh, I think they're on the phone. Samsung SM.
So if somebody dialed in, connected in from their cell phone, you could please identify yourself for the meeting. Okay, this is awkward. No, I'm curious, since we can't identify them, do we disconnect them?
Well, they'll disconnect themselves. I'm sure they can listen, but excuse me, if they're looking to speak to this application, the only alternative I would think is to give them my work cell phone number and they can maybe call in on that and put them on
Okay.
a speakerphone.
We need to have their name so they can be party to the applications,
Right.
correct?
Correct.
All right, well, we'll just keep that in mind moving forward. So this public hearing is still open. So at this point, I would look to anyone in the audience if you want to ask any questions about this application as it's been presented this evening. This is the time. In the back, sir.
Will you come up and could you guys let the you let them
Yeah, absolutely.
share?
There's a mic, so that's why it's better pick up.
Oh, okay.
Your name
Yeah.
again, sir?
Paul Davis. I was able to take a look at the new plan. I much prefer that the open space is conglomerated and together. On the south side. My question is, what protections are in place to keep that section from either A, being further developed, or be broken off into different property, like turned into a different property and then further developed from there? If anyone knows what can stop, what is in place to stop that from happening.
Don't know that we're actually stopping this stage. I mean, this is a residential subdivision. Zoning regulations are going to require size for lots. There's water,
If they still have density, if they haven't maxed out their density with this proposal, excuse me, and it allows for additional water sewer, they could come back for an amendment. This is a conventional.
It is.
yeah, it's
So
conventional.
there's no required open space.
Right. So, and if our regulations change going forward,
Yeah.
that might also allow for further development of a parcel.
So in this particular circumstance, we're not, this isn't a development that's being restrictive.
Mhm.
It's
It's not like, oh, here it is and that's how it stays. Like, they can come back and request for more.
to the limits of the zoning regulations and the environmental regulations that are in place at any point in time. So I don't think this isn't something that necessarily is fixed in stone.
Yeah.
Or concrete.
It would have to come back to the planning commission, though, for their subdivision.
But it couldn't be subdivided if it didn't meet the subdivision regulations of the town at the time.
Well, it does concern me because you would end up in that case with an even more dense situation. I don't know all the ins and outs of, what an area of that size could be zoned for and what it could handle. But certainly, as I said in the last time, I just don't want this place to look like, a dense suburb when it's supposed to be it's a scenic resource. It's supposed to have an open look to it.
John?
Of course, I'm
Go ahead.
maybe jumping ahead of myself, but that's just my concern.
John?
So we don't have anything specific about that area, but I would note that there are wetlands and buffers in that area which severely restrict the available area for any development, which I don't envision because it's, this has been planned to fit the needs and wishes of the applicant. And there's nothing hidden here. This is what we feel the area can support and what will protect resources. And so for something else to come along, it would be, well, I just don't think that's something that you can anticipate.
So I don't know that you're going to get the direct answer, the absolute
Right.
answer that you might be looking for. But
That's pretty good.
I mean, it's the regulations that are in place. It's the ecological limitations that are in place.
Yeah. Okay.
Somebody else is currently trying to sign on. It says joining, but they haven't come in yet.
Thank you.
I'm done. Thank you.
Doing the good in public for a
Yep.
David Albright. I'm at 75 Chapin, which is across the road from the proposed development. Surprisingly, Paul and I haven't talked, but I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this thus far, but I had the sense that part of the way that it was structured was out of a sensitivity to the scenic corridor, and that remaining land was addressing our respect for the scenic corridor and the overlay, and that this proposal was a reflection of our concerns about that corridor, and that now to hear that because there's considerable amount of road frontage on that remaining land, and if all of a sudden that's just fair game, why are we pretending that we're addressing the scenic overlay when in fact we're potentially not, by just disrespecting the future of that open land, when we're kind of telling the developer we appreciate his keeping that land open, but on the other side of the hand we're saying, but we acknowledge that it could be developed. So I think we're kind of dancing around a little bit, patting ourselves on the back about how we're respecting the scenic corridor when in fact maybe we're not. If it was a traditional development and the roads were just along the frontage 200 feet, you would have that remaining land for a wildlife and scenic corridor and recreation, and you wouldn't have a big cul-de-sac in the middle of a meadow, and you could still have 9 lots. So I think we have to think, I would hope that we would think harder about what happens to that remaining land, and if it can't be kept open. Not that we're trying to keep it open, but we'd like to. We are acknowledging that we would like to see it remain open, and but if we can't, because it's just not a thing, why not just put them along the road? And then that land behind there does remain open until a future road comes in. Not that might happen, probably will happen, maybe not in our lifetimes, but for now, we'd have the scenic corridor without even having to do anything about it. And I'm curious if the commission has any thoughts on that. Thank you.
To start with, we do have to deal with the application that's in front of us. So, that is our first. That's what we're working off from. We have the application that's in front of us. We work to the best we can with that application. And if an applicant comes in and they've got a proposal that fits with the regulations that are in place, we have to give it due consideration. And I do feel that they've worked with us and heard us, made changes that were significant, and have left a large amount of open space. We walked the parcel. We had a tenant farmer come through and talk about what was usable versus not usable. We saw where the visual, the visual impact was, the distance and so forth. So, I mean, I think a lot of these elements were all looked at. I guess I have to be personal on this one. And I find it it's a little, it takes us off base a little bit when we ask if we're protecting a parcel from ever having future development. This is a normal subdivision. This isn't a PUD or a conservation subdivision or a conservation. That was never a proposal. So it's hard to get up here and say we're going to block anybody from doing anything in the future if it's their land, if it fits within the requirements and the regulations that are in place in the town, in the community. And that's what we're always changing. We're always modifying the regulations to provide greater protections for both the landowners and the community. So it's a balancing act. So anyways, I'm going to bounce this off to the rest of the commission before I put my foot completely in my mouth. Anybody else have anything you want to add? Patty?
I just wanted to add that I looked into this extensively. I was one of the people that came to your site when we all walked the property. I believe as planning commissioners, I'll just speak for myself, that we really do take the town plan as an oversight, as a background. We make sure to take that into consideration. I really want to pass on to the public. There's this site called BioFinder that plots out where the wetlands are, where the steep slopes are. I'm very much into the environment personally, as just a person up here, not irresponsible of being a planning commission member. And I think that this site, after he changed everything and condensed it and put everything into this corner, away from the wetlands, away from where the sediment can drain down, and the fact that even where the storm water retention pond is, I'm much happier with the changes and the fact that you're condensing everything, because that's how we're going to preserve our scenic overlay district. And to me, that's, from the bottom of my heart, very important to me personally. So I just want to throw that in. That it's a much better plan than the first time around.
Okay. Any of you online folks? David, John, Tom, Josh?
Nothing from me.
All right. Does anyone else in the audience like to offer commentary? Then, yep, please. If you could come up to the table, that'd be great.
I'm Julie Albright, and I live at 75 Chapin Road. And we did kind of, from the other meeting, have the understanding that there would be that open area, kind of like to balance out things. And now it sounds like that's not highly likely. That could change. And this, we appreciate everything the boards do, but the feeling is that I think we should really stop to consider what we need to preserve, because if you don't think about it now, it's too late. My history has been back 1840, my family came to Vermont. My great-grandfather's farm is where the strike zone is now. My parents, I grew up on Susie Wilson Road. My dad wanted to give each kid an acre. He gave his son an acre. And by the time the Circumferential Highway came through, his land was condemned. My dad's land was condemned. So I ended up on Chapin Road. Where I live used to be a field. It did. But people come to, well, see, Essex is really exploding. It is. And there is just this little strip of Chapin Road and Colonel Page, and there's just a little area that still kind of holds something of what it used to be. The orchard, it's still dirt. And I just think with the scenic corridor idea, there could be areas that are really beneficial to, that really do well with being developed, you know? But I wonder what you might want to preserve going forward is what I'm suggesting as the town grows. Yeah, that's all I want to say, I guess.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
John, I'm looking, I've got the plan up right now, and I don't know if we can put, if you guys can put it up.
Yeah.
But it kind of looks like with bringing that road shorter, I mean, I'm looking at the shaded area, and it looks like it is equal to, or if not larger than than it was in the first round.
The road is shorter, and the open space, okay, lot 5 is 15.8 acres, and we have a very small part of that as the building envelope. The rest of it is open land and contains the majority of the planned trails that will cross his property. So, coupled with the fact that, like I indicated previously, the crosshatched area has significant limitations for development because of wetlands and buffers. And as the intention of this plan to preserve that, the majority of Lot 5 is open land. Not looking at coming in here with another application.
But you've also, in this plan, also preserves the entire length of Colonel Page Road. There's no intrusion on Colonel Page Road.
Yes.
There's no paving requirements on Colonel Page with this plan.
That's correct. That's the primary reason why the Chapin Road entrance was put or redesigned so that we wouldn't have to affect the the gravel surface on Chapin Road.
Quite frankly, the amount of work that's gone in the preparation has probably gone about 500% more than we normally do in sketch plan. So I appreciate the effort and the work that the applicant did, that the staff did, and that members of the community did to look at this and help guide this. It usually we get into this level of detail when we get into the preliminary and then the final. So, I mean, this has been a lot of back and forth and a lot of review. Does anyone else like to offer any comment on this before I close the public hearing? Yes, sir, in the back, Mr. Davis.
I don't have like a new version of the written plan or anything, but I don't know if it could be written. This is a suggestion, I guess, that it could be written in the plan that the intention is to maintain it that way. I know it may not be like set in stone, but it could be something that in the way future, if somebody proposed something else with the open space, that we could say, well, it says here in the original development plan that the intention was to keep it open for the scenic resource and for environmental purposes. It doesn't sound like you intend to develop it, but future holds. So it might be like a little extra preservation. If that makes sense. That's a suggestion.
It's a good discussion point going into the next round. Thank you. Any others?
I'd like to make a comment to the public. I think, do you mind if I stand, or does everyone prefer that I sit down next to the mic for the recording?
Do the mic, please.
Okay. I think, judging what time is, in 100 years, most of us will not be around here. So things will change a million times, from, this used to be a police station here. How much of land has already been developed, and people more focus on what the intent at the moment is versus who has the possession of it and what kind of people are occupying the land at the moment. Passing that on into the next generation is what matters. So again, in 100 years, nobody's going to care from this, even who does anything with what land. but it's important to acknowledge the person that is the representative of the land, to know what the intent is of it at the moment, because rules, as we know, are all going to change over time. The regulations are going to change. There's nothing that's going to be able to protect anything from this ever being developed after we're gone. Somebody's eventually going to bulldoze all this down and build something completely new. So what's most important is to focus on the kind of character of people that are occupying and who our neighbors are. So once you know who your neighbors are, you'll know how everything else is going to proceed from that point on. Because whoever takes over these lots and everything down in the future, it's going to matter who those people are. So it's important that people's characters align in order for our greater intention to perceive in this. So it's to kind of put everybody at ease. Even when we purchased this, we way overpaid for the land, so it would never make sense to. The intention is never to make money with it. So the intent was to preserve and to bring good people together. So like, because we love Essex and we love being part of the community, our whole intention was to create this so we can bring these people and make them part of this community. So the intention is not to make money with it. So the intent is literally everything that we're saying about preserving, everybody that's moving in, that is the intent, is that we preserve, that we get to keep it open, that we care, that we made the adjustment that we made based on people's, opinions, on everything. Like, everybody cares. Everybody that's going to be living here, everybody cares. So everybody's, you don't need rules and regulations to speak to anybody, and I can test for everybody that's going to be living here to ask or to preserve anything. And it's simple as a conversation. You don't need any rules or regulations on anybody that to preserve what's going on here. It's a very simple conversation with the wonderful people that will be living there, and it's considered a done deal. As most of the deals that we have done in Essex. So I want everybody to rest assured that we do care about people's opinions, irrelevant of the rules and regulations. So,
okay. With that, I would take a motion to close the public hearing.
I move we close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved by Shu, seconded by Josh. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You still.
Patty, did you vote or no?
I did.
Okay,
Yeah.
I did not hear.
Say something.
Well, we're getting there. We're not voting. This is the public hearing. Commissioners, at this point, what follow-up questions, comments, or concerns do you have? Patty, we'll start with you.
I just wanted to say that that Act 171, there are starting to be laws and acts coming from high up down to all of the planning commissions in Vermont. There is a travel corridor for deer. I have it all mapped out. Crossing values, where this little neighborhood is. I even mapped out where the deer cross, where the mountains are. The view is not obstructed. These are things even 100 years from now, I believe, our grandchildren, I want them to have personally. Okay. So I'm very interested in Act 171, and that is preserving in Vermont, instead of having 14,000 acres clear-cutted between now and per year. That's how much land is clear-cutted per year. We want to stop that, slow it down, and condense neighborhoods like you did. Your plan is a great example, personally, for what I'm looking for, personally. Just me speaking. So, and you're not in the way of the travel corridors. The deer can still roam. Good job.
thank you.
David?
I've got no concerns. What I would say is because of where we're at in this, the applicant has heard the public comment about being willing to possibly put some restrictions on future development. They can take that away and take it under consideration, but we've issued no waivers and it's not a PUD, so I don't see any reason to spend too much more time on that.
Okay.
I would ditto David.
John?
Same. Ditto.
Shu?
Ditto.
Josh?
Ditto, same ditto.
Okay, so we've got a full slate of dittos. With one
I'm sorry, was that dodos? Oh.
Ditto.
Sorry. Ditto.
Not dodos, dittos. On any given night, that can flip flop. Is anyone prepared to offer a motion at this point? Remembering that this is sketch, so we've put a lot of effort into this as a sketch.
Can I just point out one thing that I should have at the beginning?
I
Just
think
that
you've lost the
I've already-
opportunity.
it's passed me by.
ahead.
Huh? So, according to our regulations at sketch plan, you're supposed to approve a preliminary phasing allocation. It'll be fully approved at the final plan review. So that's just, it's something I want to make sure that you're aware of. And so that's covered in section 3 of the staff notes. And we have enough capacity to for this. So it would be 5 units in 1 year, and then the remaining in a following year.
So basically, we're looking for a proposal, maybe a motion to approve as written with the typographical memos that you noted earlier.
Mhm. Yes.
So moved. I'm looking for a second.
I'll second.
Shu got you.
Shu got it first.
Oh, I wrote Shu, so sorry.
One quick clarifying question.
Yes.
Catherine, is that the phasing allocation that the applicant asked for?
I don't think so. No.
So, I mean, we have the capacity to do all of this in 2023. So I'd just be interested in knowing what the applicant's
Yeah.
desire.
The zoning doesn't allow it all to be done. If outside of the sewer court, it's only 5 per year.
Oh, we're out. That's right. Okay.
And I would,
Thank you.
if there's any discussion about that, since it's a sketch, that sort of fine tuning could be done for the next round. If there's anything that needs to be tweaked,
Right.
or it could be tweaked or wavered.
Right.
Yep.
And just a reminder, not to deal with this application, but that's on your proposed changes about the phasing. You're feeling that it needs some.
So motion, seconded. Any further discussion? David, you okay with leaving it as is?
Yeah. Thanks.
Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next on our docket is a preliminary plan. Are we ready to roll? Do we need a minute as we shift?
If just people are going to
Okay, we'll let people shift. We'll sort of go quiet for a minute. People shift around.
Oh, I'm speaking. Do you want me to pull up the plan? Anything, just so people can see what we're
I
talking
think it would be a good idea just to have the overview, the overview up. Just as so we have a reference point.
Yep.
I don't want to take up too much room in this map. A little bigger.
I'm watching you, Patty.
I'm a very visual person. Visual.
I started having to snuggle up to Dustin and people to talk.
Just a heads up, Mr. Chair. It looks like we have, I don't know, we lost that phone, but we got a new, somebody jumped on called GLA.
Okay.
Do they need to be admitted?
No, I think they're in.
Okay.
I missed that. What was that? Somebody was trying to get in?
Somebody is in.
Somebody is in.
Okay.
Got a new.
So whoever is online with the sign-on name of GALA, if you could identify yourself for the secretary, please.
That person was on earlier and got off.
Okay.
And I see the phone number is gone, so I don't know if it's the same person.
All right. Well, let's rock and roll. And just be aware, whoever GALA is, we won't be able to speak until we have you identified and we can administer the oath.
And if you are trying to talk, you're muted, so unmute. Okay.
All right. So let's move on now. Preliminary plan, public hearing. This is a proposal for an 8-unit, 5-lot PUDR at 137 Towers Road. Staff.
All right. So we have 5 new lots proposed and a total of 8 units. There's one existing single-family home, and there are an additional 3 single-family homes proposed at the end of a shared driveway, which that shared driveway was approved at your sketch plan hearing. And then there are 4 duplexes that are located at the end of the cul-de-sac of a new private road. And the private road is in the location of the existing driveway for the home that is there now. There is very little in the way of design that has changed since your sketch plan hearing when you saw this. Definitely a lots more detail went into it with the engineering plans. There's a whole set of those included, like 23 pages worth of plans here. So there's a lot of work that was done. The applicant is proposing on-site water as well as on-site septic. There are in between the duplex, the 2 duplexes, there's some amenities for them, as well as at the end of the private driveway where their turnaround is, there's also some outdoor amenities, and as well as a walking path that goes past down the road connecting the existing unit. Of street trees, I just wanted to point out they're hoping to take advantage of much of the existing vegetation as opposed to providing regular street trees. There are some plantings that are proposed more so in front of lots 1 through 3, which are the new single-family homes. Sketch plan, there was discussion about providing an easement along Towers Road for a multi-use path. That is not shown on the plans, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention for a discussion point. Also at Sketch, there was discussion about potential sidewalk along the private road. From what I can read in the minutes, it seemed like you were lukewarm to that idea, but there wasn't really a final decision made on that. Public Works is fine with the roadway design. They, have typical comments about just wanting to see a few more details with stormwater. They still have concern about the capacity for the wells in the area because of previous problems. The applicant has stated that from the research they've done looking at A&R data, that they don't have any concerns. At the end of the day, it's the state that will be approving this anyway. It is not the town. The town, Public Works, I guess in particular, doesn't want to have to bail them out if those wells should fail. So they really want to feel more comfortable that there are no issues. And so they have a comment and a condition that's been included asking for more, for a letter from their engineer stating that after a review of the A&R data that there is no reported issues or concerns with the future wells and their yields. Let's see. So another comment at sketch plan was concerning the buffer between the neighboring property, which is the Johnson's property, and where the duplexes are. And if there was enough there to shield between the 2 properties. Applicant has stated that they feel that there is existing vegetation there, as well as they've made sure that they've shifted the houses further up. So that might be something you also. So at final plan, we'll just need to see more details on their shared land, any sort of shared amenities. that would include wells and wastewater systems and open space, which is typical that we would see that sort of information at final and not at this point. But that is already listed as a condition of approval. As well as there are several other conditions too, but I think those are all pretty typical of what you would expect, aside from what I pointed out with what Public Works would like to see with the wells.
Questions for Catherine? Yeah.
So you said the wastewater stuff, you're going to wait till final, but I just was trying to get a visual of where the wastewater disposal system is. And over on the right-hand side on C201 map, it says proposed community wastewater disposal system. So would all this stuff from the wells go there?
If that's wastewater
Oh,
we're
that's
talking
wastewater.
about. So
Oh, okay.
the septic.
You hope that it wouldn't go there.
Yeah.
No, okay. I just didn't know because I have a biofinder map with wetlands. And, that was a concern of mine.
Yeah, so
But-
there are wetlands on the site, which I didn't point out. That was discussed at
Well, I have it here.
at sketch, and the development really is outside of the wetland area, so
Okay.
that includes the water
Okay.
and the wastewater. At least the wastewater. I'm trying to remember where the wells are.
And the only other question is the center of that roundabout on my map. Is that a catch basin too? Like there were 3 that were listed, but like the last one we just heard.
Right.
Is that the same type of thing?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
It is. It is
It's a catch basin, right?
Yeah.
a catch basin. Okay.
Yeah. Doug Love from Trudell Consulting Engineers. So, right in the middle of the cul-de-sac is a depressed green area with a storm catch basin for
Oh, okay.
collecting stormwater.
I'm just trying to get everything on one map because there were 8 of them and I was trying to put everything
Yeah,
on
good luck with that. No.
There's a lot going on. Thank you, Doug, for answering.
Yeah, no.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners with questions for Catherine? Hearing none. Turn it over to you, Doug.
Well, Catherine did a great job. I don't have to read all these notes to you, save time. Let's see. I'll just hit some of the highlights. I think similar or maybe even to a greater extent than the last applicant. As most of you know that were here, we went through 3 sketch plan hearings. We had a site visit with some former staff that went out to the site, walked it. So this has been a real evolution. We started out with very conventional looking lots, and we've ended up with these 2 clustered PRD type layouts. I think we're well received by previous staff and hopefully you folks as well. We're conserving 2/3 of this property will be lot 5, which is all open space, which is most all of the eastern half or more than half, obviously, of the property. Encompasses a large open meadow wetland down all the way down to the brook. What else? I think there was some concern, not concern, but interest in, how this is a PRD versus, or what are the benefits? What can we make and provide to make it more of a community feel? So I think, Catherine, you can go to the landscape plan, shows the amenities, LA01. So up at the north end, as Catherine said, we've got a large stormwater basin as sort of the focal point for those 3 single-family lots, whether we like it or not. There's about a 400-foot walking path that runs along the east side of that stormwater pond. We've done extensive landscaping along the walking path and the pond, just to give some visual interest for those using it. All native species, a little bit of everything, lots of dogwood and other plants that will really promote birds, bird habitat and bird vegetation and such. At the very far end at the turnaround, we've got some large benches proposed that are detailed on the next sheet, some shade trees and such, and there's an incredible view of Mount Mansfield looking off to the east from that location. So the rendering up in the upper left is sort of what we had in mind for an amenity down there for the folks in the neighborhood to be able to hang out on those benches and watch the mountains and such. And going down back one, Catherine, if you would, to the two duplex buildings. So there's a total of 4 units down there. We've got a 20 by 20 foot patio with a 10 by 20 pergola with picnic tables underneath that. Significant amount of raised bed gardens that could be built. And again, a lot of plantings, more grasses and such, shrubs around the patio area for those folks to utilize. Trying to develop a community sense with those amenities as part of this. Plus, have a diversity of housing with the duplexes as opposed to standard single family that you see in that area. As Catherine said, a lot of details, which unless I'm not going to go through unless you have a specific question on wastewater, for instance. As we talked about, there's a large community system way out to the west. There's a ridge of gravel soil that we're utilizing, which is great for sewage disposal. The rest of the site, heavier soils, not so good. Individual wells on the lots are proposed. And stormwater systems that make up basically along all these roadways and driveways. There'll be grass lined swales that convey water in some points to either catch basins or culverts. Ultimately, all of the stormwater will end up in 2 large stormwater created wetlands, actually. Man-made wetlands, if you will. I know Catherine alerted me this afternoon to the Johnsons having a few questions and concerns about drainage. Catherine, maybe you could go to sheet C202, please. The fourth or fifth sheet again. So the Johnsons are right at the entry to the right of the road. Nope.
Not that one.
Back one, maybe. Back 1 or 2 sheets.
Yeah.
Yep. Now if you just scroll up. Easier said than done. Yep.
There's a
Perfect.
little delay on this sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's good. So it's hard to see, but there's an existing driveway underneath what is shown as the proposed new road. So that's being built to town road standards up to the cul-de-sac, meaning it's going to be a paved road, 24 feet wide, 4-foot shoulders, drainage swales. So the Johnson's concern was, possible runoff from this property and these improvements onto their property, which is the house that you see there. So I just wanted to point out that, again, the new road will have deep swales to intercept the water coming from the west downhill, and also to pick up the water coming off the new road, obviously. There's a set of 2 catch basins sort of halfway down the road, which will collect the water from the swales and ditches, convey them to another catch basin in the middle of the cul-de-sac, and then ultimately discharge in a stone-lined swale that ends up to the east of the lower duplex. So that's one of our stormwater ponds down there. So I think we'll have many opportunities to prevent water from entering the Johnson property. They also had a concern you can see a row of trees on the right side of the proposed road, and then along the back of the Johnson property, those are large mature white pines that are pretty much on the property line. Their concern was potential impacts to the roots from the work. The roadway swale on the right-hand side of the road will be, the new swale will be about 15 feet from the property line. We've basically taken that new road and offset it as far as we can to the left or away from the Johnson property. However, we're pinched with wetlands on that side of the road, so we're trying to balance between what the wetland folks will allow us to impact and trying to get that road over away from the Johnsons to protect the trees. So I think with that 15 feet, you may encounter some roots, but I don't think we can do any better as far as that road location goes. I think I will, I'm going to take a few minutes, Mike, and then go over a few staff report twos. Page 8, lines 250 to 252, pursuant to the zoning regulation, table 2.2, which is the scenic resource section. Overlay, the applicant shall include building elevations for all new structures and building envelopes for all lots in the final plan submission. The Gudamas won't be building houses. They're not contractors, so especially the 3 single-family homes, we had no way of knowing what those buildings will look like, and they'll just sell them as lots like any other single-family lot. The duplexes, we do have likenesses and renderings of what we think that may look like. The applicants found a nice duplex design in Colchester, and that's the footprint that you see there. And like I said, we have photos of that we could provide at final. But like I said, I'm not sure how we can provide building elevations for the single family lots at this point. We don't know who or what they're going to build on those lots. Also, the single family lots are so far away from Towers Road, you'll never see them from any location really along any of the roadways. This duplex you may see as you go down Towers Road, depending on the time of year and tree cover. So this we'd ask for leniency on that requirement. We're good with the multi-use path easement along Towers Road. I don't really recall the discussion of the sidewalk along this new road. I think we don't think it's justified. There's no sidewalks on Towers Road or Chapin or Old Stage or any surrounding roads, so I'm not be sort of a sidewalk to nowhere really. These roads are, like I said, 24 feet to the cul-de-sac and then 20 feet, so they're plenty wide. The amount of people that will be there, I think it'll be safe for folks to walk along the edge of the road and still not worry about traffic. So would be our so along those lines, going down to the conditions of approval, I have some suggested changes for, say, condition 3A. It reads building elevations for all new structures. I would propose to change that to say building photos or likenesses for the new duplex structures. Would be something we could commit to. Let's see. Condition F, revise sheet C401, which is a stormwater detail sheet, and we should also include C805, which is another stormwater sheet in that, just to make that condition accurate, because those two go hand in hand. If we're changing one, we'll change the other. Lastly, as Catherine mentioned, Public Works is trying to force feed us some wording in condition 5 that we shall submit statement stating that a review of the A&R documentation has been completed and that there are no reported issues or concerns regarding well yields. I have a problem, first of all, with them telling me what I should be saying. And the second thing is, it might be on the bio finder, but it's also on the A&R atlas. There's a map of all the wells in this area. Some are accurately mapped, others not so much, but you click on it and it will tell you the yield of the well as reported from the well driller's report. And it may sometimes have the actual well driller's report, which tells you how deep they went. That's about it. There's no commentary in that A&R website that has a place for the well driller or anybody else to issue comments on issues or concerns. I mean, we have to rely on the information of those well drillers' logs. It seems like it's strong. I actually submitted to staff a map that we prepared. Well yields are all over the place, but they're good in my expert opinion, and I can render a little bit more of a letter that summarizes my findings, but it's not really accurate to say that the A&R documentation doesn't have any reported issues or concerns. That's just not something I'm comfortable saying, because that's not documentation in the A&R doesn't draw conclusions. I can only go by the information presented from past wells in the area. So I'm perfectly fine with coming up with a statement. My suggested wording to Catherine was a letter from the applicant's engineer shall be submitted with a final plan submission addressing their review of the A&R documentation regarding well yields, which I would be welcome to do.
Is that it, Doug?
That's it.
Commissioners, questions for the applicant?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I have a lot of questions. Can you just back up and tell me where that retention pond is that you mentioned that's on, when you were talking about that neighbor, complaining about the tree roots? You talked about these catch basins leading to a retention pond.
Yeah.
Is that to the left of the circle somewhere?
Yeah, I can just come up and point it to you.
Just looking at this big map. Because I was just trying to figure out.
Do you mean down there? Do you mean?
So,
Okay. Yep.
My back to everybody. So the new road, the existing driveways were right under it right here.
Mm-hmm.
So we're proposing drainage swales here and here, and water to a catch basin here. Similarly, we've got a low spot here. That water will be conveyed through a pipe to this basin. That water from the cul-de-sac, that water here, and it was here are pre-treated and treated in that water.
Okay, so that detention pond is like that circle on the right. Okay, I got it. Gotcha.
There's 2 4-bays for pre-treatment, and then the main pump.
Okay.
This will all, because we're over an acre impervious, all will be reviewed and approved by the state of Vermont.
Right, with a permit. And then the other question is, I looked at where you're going to put. I'm a master gardener, so I love all the plants you picked. By the way,
I can't take credit. Our landscape architect has.
No, excellent. Because with the type, I studied the soils, and you were talking about, and I noticed way in the back, when you had little pictures of the wrong way to put a silt fence and the right way to put a silt fence. So, because of the nature of the soils, and I do have an ANR map through Biofinder. I actually went to that map. Are those gonna hold up? Because in past, you know, depending on the slope of the land, water coming downhill, you know, just like that neighbor was complaining, I'm concerned about water going into the wetlands. That's not good. And having the soil and mud and everything come down. How do we know that those fences you're going to put up are those, what's the correct term I'm looking for? They're black.
Silt
Silt fences, yeah.
Silt
Fences, yeah.
Yes.
Erosion.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a concern.
We've designed, we have a site specific, we have a plan for everything. There's an erosion control plan that shows where all the silt fences are. If they're installed properly, they should work fine. They're installed.
If they're not, you're going to take care of it. Right.
There should be some oversight by, either the contractor or.
Okay.
Yeah, the stormwater ponds typically during construction are temporarily used to collect sediment from all this disturbance, and then they get cleaned out and then built to their final stage after most of the disturbance is done.
And then one other thing, so the choices are where you told me where all the retention ponds and the wells, and sometimes things go to wetlands, and I don't want phosphorus and pollutants and everything going into our nice wetlands. So all that you have under, with the treatment areas and controlling the silt, and I guess that's a concern too of mine.
We've designed the stormwater systems to meet all the state's rules and regulations. I can't speak on real specifics, to be honest with you. I'm not the stormwater expert, but they tend to be over-designed for large storm events, to be honest with you. As you can tell by the one at the far end of the site, it takes up a substantial area.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. The cross section, without going into details, is like 2 feet of stone, and then there's mulch layers and such, so the water all gets filtered through that stone. And generally speaking, the water level will be about 6 inches below the surface, so wetland plants will still have wet feet, so to speak.
Great.
And then freeboard of about a foot when the storms come. Water level goes up and then slowly goes down.
Thank you.
Patty, the town stormwater engineer also does checks during construction.
Yeah. Well, thank you for educating me. I appreciate
Oh,
it.
good questions.
Commissioners, any additional questions for the applicant?
None for me.
Okay. John, David, Josh, you guys good?
I don't have any. I kind of like what I've seen so far, but I don't have the history of all this either. But I'm good.
Okay.
Raphael, good?
Knox, good.
All right. With that, I would take a motion to open the public hearing.
I move we open the public hearing.
Second.
Moved by Josh, seconded by Dave. You're just a little slow. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Public hearing is open. So, folks, if anybody has any questions, comments they want to make about this, this is the time. Let's raise your hand, be recognized, and give us your thoughts, questions.
We'll have you come to the table if you're going to speak.
Johnson, you're up.
I give up your chair.
Good evening, Les Johnson, the neighbor next door. Got a few things that are of concern, and I trying to figure out how things have changed over the almost 40 years that we've been there. On
our initial attempt was to put our driveway further up Towers Road towards Old Stage Road. But we were told at the time that the quote unquote line of sight would not accommodate a driveway further up Towers Road. Obviously, somewhere between when we built and when the Goodham was built, that line of sight somehow changed, because their driveway is closer to Old Stage Road than ours. And so now you're telling me that it's okay for 16 to 20 cars a day coming in and out of there, that apparently that line of sight, so I guess that rise in the road somehow sunk. I don't understand, but whatever. So that's a concern of the amount of traffic that'll be coming in and out, literally 100 feet from our driveway. And I'm not quite sure, and maybe this gentleman can answer the question about this 15-foot of open space for walking or biking or whatever. Where is that going to be? Is that along Towers Road?
That's at the end of the private driveway.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with Towers Road then?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And in reading some of the comments from past meetings, that apparently setbacks have been changed and or reduced. So I'm not quite sure from the drawings how far these 4 units are going to be from our property, but they look pretty close. And I'm wondering if there's any way that the 4 units could have been put in the back part of the property and a single unit closer to us, if that's the desired effect, to have that many units. And obviously, again, you've got the number of cars with 4 units. Will it be 4 dogs? There are no dogs now. And again, not that I'm opposed to dogs, but that could be a lot of barking. If I go out to work in my garden, am I going to be barked at every time I go out or whatever? I don't know. The considerable talk about runoff. The natural runoff is to come down Towers Road, and everything does flow onto our property and eventually into, I guess, Alderbrook or wherever it goes, but eventually it does. So we have some issues with wet property as it is now. So obviously that's a concern as to if we're going to widen a paved driveway, that's going to create more runoff. So concerned about that. You did address the issue of potentially doing something to the potential life expectancy of the line of trees that we have put in, and hopefully that will be addressed. I noticed in the last application there was talk about deer population and a deer run. We consistently have anywhere from 6 to 8 deer on our soccer fields all the time. I would hate to see if that somehow was no longer there. We've actually had moose on the property. So would like, I don't know how that's potentially addressed. I again read in the previous minutes that there's going to be an HOA involved in the property. Is that going to be for all 8 units, or just the 4 units? And how is that whole thing going to be maintained? So I think those are our main concerns. And I guess the other thing, is there a timeline for this whole thing? So I heard you mention that the Gudemers are not developers. They're not going to be building, so they're actually going to hire somebody. So does that mean there's going to be like maybe 5 different contractors in there building? And is there any focus on the style of housing, that kind of thing that's going to go in? Those are the concerns I think I have.
Okay, Catherine, you want to take a shot at any of those, or Doug, you want to,
I took good notes, so I could take a shot at.
please do.
Let's see. So site distances, we measured site distances. They are in accordance with the town specifications. Looking toward the west, there will have to be some minor brush cutting to get full site view, but that's relatively straightforward. And to the east, there wasn't an issue. So that's that.
And just to jump on that too, Kevin, you included in gap and the write up that is in accordance with public works specs, existing public works specs. So echoing what you said. Yes, sir.
One more thought. When we put our well in, our neighbor at the corner of Douglas Road was concerned about the cone of depression, that our well was going to be affecting his well some 1,000 feet away. There's going to be several wells now put in. What is that going to be affecting potentially our well? The neighbor at the time actually didn't have any water in his well, and somehow tried to blame our well affecting his well, and got the town to bring water up to his house. So town water is now all the way up to Douglas Road. If down the road, 10 years or whatever, we have an issue with water, is that going to become our responsibility, or is it going to be somehow be affected by the new development of, are they going to put in seven more wells? Or is it one well for each of the duplexes?
We're proposing 5 wells. One for each duplex, one for each single family.
So again, that's a concern.
I want to, before we get too far down the well, I do want to, make it clear that the state is the governing agency when it comes to wells. So that goes to the point that Doug, you brought up earlier about Public Works wanting us, to require statements of a certain type. That's a discussion point we're going to have because we don't regulate wells. And sure how we can, how or if we can incorporate that sort of concern other than just noting it that it's a concern. So we'll loop back to that before the discussion's over.
Yeah, Dustin.
Yes, Dave.
So also just for the neighbors' information, if either of the wells for the 2 duplexes which abut his property were to overshadow either his septic or well, he would get a notification, and in that notification process would have an opportunity to communicate and express any concerns with the state agency before the permit's issued.
Okay, Doug, we're going to please continue.
Yep, I'll just go down through Mr. Johnson's list. He asked about the distance from the closest duplex to his house, and that scales 150 feet. So his house is about 75 feet to the property line, and we're about 60 feet from the property line as well. Moving the duplexes to the end of the property, not really an option. We've got wetland encroachments as you move further to the north. This is a nice open meadow, nice views to the east. And again, the former planning staff, did a site visit and felt this was a great place to add some additional units in the spirit of the PRD. There's also a wetland there to the north of the duplexes, which squeeze them in the location they are. So we can't be any further, unfortunately, from the Johnson's property line, or we're into the wetland buffer, which is a non-starter for the wetland folks. General soils out here are wet. As Mr. Johnson said, that's why they've got a mound system, high groundwater. As I said, I think surface water were covered very well with the road and the roadway swales. This road also will have under drains on each side of it, which may dry out the groundwater, may drain the groundwater table a little bit. No guarantees, but it can't make it any worse, put it that way. I'm sure there are deer in that meadow, but again, that's part of the open space, common land, 25 plus acres that will remain open and undeveloped in perpetuity, so there won't be any issues like the previous applicant that we're worried about what's going to happen in the future. This is it for this property.
Doug, to go back to the road for a moment.
Certainly.
The addition of the swales on each side of the road and the drainage to bring, based on applications that have come before us in the past, I would almost anticipate that to improve the sheeting that goes, north to south across there. That might actually improve some.
I'm expecting that it'll be drier, right? Both surface and groundwater conditions will improve when this new road goes in. HOA, not really there, but there will be at least one HOA for road maintenance. Well, there's a lot of shared infrastructure, the stormwater, the roadway, wastewater, so there'll be one master HOA, what I presume, to cover the maintenance and upkeep of all those shared utilities. Not sure about the duplexes, if that's might be a little separate with that shared driveway, but once we get through this step, obviously, before final, we'll get some legal docs prepared and submitted at final to clarify those questions. I think that's all I had for Mr. Johnson's concerns.
What do we miss, sir? We went down through the list, and did we touch on your concerns?
Yes.
I have a couple of.
Please. Yeah.
I'm Nancy. I'm concerned about the trees that we had to put in. That's a stipulation from the town. If something happens to these trees, are we required to replace them?
I believe that was that a requirement from your soccer facility? Is that
Well,
when
it's still under a soccer facility. I mean,
so it's still an active, I would just.
it's not active at this point, but it could be active because we've never changed it.
I would have to check the approval to see how it's written. In today's approvals we put for the life of the project, not sure if when that was approved, how it was written. So say it would be dependent on the approval granted to the Johnsons.
We've only done that for the last decade or so.
Right. So
the
we can-
condition, the condition would have to read if a mature tree ever died, it would have to be replaced.
Well, our
we were
our conditions
required to
that
put
we,
them all
Right.
around.
our conditions
Yeah,
that
no,
we
I
have
understand.
today are
Yeah.
for the life of the project. And I don't believe that we had that back then. But I will certainly check the files and we can address that again at final.
Seems reasonable enough.
The other question I have is, we had a stipulation on us that we could not put in a paved driveway, and yet this can be paved. Can that stipulation be removed without us having to come back and apply for that change?
You talk about stipulation on your parcel?
Yes.
You know, quite frankly, we really can't address that in an application for your neighbor. I think that's a reasonable question, but not in the context of their application.
Right.
I don't know. I
It
don't know.
just doesn't seem fair that one can do one thing, but yet we can't do another.
But we all, I'm not to argue that against that, but your parcel went in 40 years ago. Public work specs have evolved over time, so this is coming in under what we have for specs today. That said, I don't think that's an unreasonable question. I think that would be more of something to float through Public Works and or the staff, but again, not part of this application. I'm very, very hesitant to get into whether or not you can or cannot when we're talking about the Gudma's application.
Okay, just wondering. And just to verify, I think our well is 585 feet? 525. And we get 1.5 gallons a minute.
Not having ever been on a well, I don't know what that means.
Not much water.
If a well yields a quart per minute, it's 360 gallons a day. So I don't know how much water you use, but that's a decent amount of water. Just to put it into perspective. Most of the wells out there are 1, 3, 5, 20, 100 gallons, 16 gallons a minute, 3 gallons a minute, 30 gallons a minute. The Gudma's well is 20 gallons a minute.
Okay, do we have any additional questions? Let's bring it back to the table for a few minutes. Commissioners, what are your thoughts, questions? What do we need on this?
Justin?
David?
So to Doug's point about, I went over to the table 2.20 regarding the elevations and building envelopes, and the plan does say that we're required to have building envelopes. I think we could achieve that pretty easily, because once you take his SB or setback line, basically that could be the building envelope. And then it just says that it's required for typical building elevations. So it's not the actual elevations of the buildings. So I think if we have a stipulation in there that restricts the height, which, you know, that's already in the regs, I really don't think we care. I know it's in the scenic district, but they can't be seen from Towers Road or anywhere else. So just typical elevations would satisfy me. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. Next. Y'all got to speak, so you might as well jump in.
I don't have any questions.
John?
I don't have any questions either.
Josh?
I'm good. I was just looking at condition 5, nothing profound to say, but that I was reading it and listening to Doug's point about how this is really just, to me, sort of a boilerplatey condition where we really just want it to say this is okay to go. So I don't know if this exact wording, if Doug was taking issue with it because the specific nature of an A&R documentation, I'd be okay with changing that just to say the wells are, they checked out, the wells are good, whatever the wording needs to be. But that's no profound thoughts other than that.
Okay. Now to the room.
Now to the room. So Les Johnson had a question, Doug, about timeline and basically for the project as a whole. Is there any timeline at all, or we're just talking subdivision here?
I guess I'd have to throw that to the applicants. I mean, we'd love to get through the permit process by spring.
Yeah.
We've got state permits, that are in the works as well as this. Beyond that, if Nagese Gudama is just sitting down, wanted to offer that.
My name is Nagasa Gautama. So like Doug said earlier, we are not going to be the contractors to build this. Our intention is to subdivide it and design it, have it approved. And I'm sorry,
Don't touch it.
Oh.
Just talk.
Okay. And work with a real estate agent and go through the proper real estate agent to get us into the market. So how long it's gonna take, I can't tell you. I'm sorry. I mean, this depends on the market, on people who will be interested to build it, and what phases that we're going to be building it in. How much energy contractors spend on it. So
There's no speculative construction.
we would like to have it. We would like to sell the property to a contractor, move out. That's what our intention is. As much as we have enjoyed the 25, 30 years of ownership of that place, we're getting old and we can't stay here too long.
Really.
So, so I wish I could give you a specific number, but I don't know what
That's fair.
I think the answer you gave is what.
I'd like to say a word, but about if it's okay.
Yes.
Like I said, we've owned our property since 1994, and lived there built and lived there since 1999, and we have really enjoyed being there. We have done nothing to impact that environmentally. We actually preserved it in so many ways, and we also enjoyed our neighbors, including the Johnsons and the Brunos and the Ron Westons and everybody else in the back as well, all the Wrights family. I just want to say, our intention is not to harm anyone or damage any. Times when things don't work for us, we work with our neighbors and resolve issues. That's how we would like to continue to, as long as we're here. We don't want to make our neighbors unhappy, but we also have to follow. We purchased this place for a purpose, and we would like to try to balance both sides so that we don't lose out on it as well. So, just want to say that. Thank you.
You all set, John?
So.
I like what you just said. I just wanted to comment and say that the scenic resource protection overlay, that's what you're part of. And the gentleman that had all those questions for you, I have another significant feature map that shows where the deer yards are, contiguous habitat, core habitat, and travel corridors are. And it's, his yard is still going to have that according to this map. I'm trying to superimpose it on your map. And because of all the wetlands and everything that are restricting further development, that's why those four, what are they, units are kind of close to your property. It's because there's no wetlands or things that would cause more flooding to your area, and all the swales and everything they're going to put in, and all the beautiful plants. The only thing I wanted to ask was, like one of my cohorts mentioned about having a restriction on the height of the buildings that are by the nice gardens you're going to put in further up the road. and the view of Mount Mansfield, you're going to build those chaise lounges. That's wonderful. I just want the whole neighborhood and your neighbors to be able to see Mount Mansfield and everything. We don't want those buildings too high within your development so that the scenic view is still going to be there. You know, like the people sitting in the chaise lounges.
Right.
I just wondered if that, I just
We
wondered.
would like to have that as well, but
Yeah.
it all depends on what's allowed, what's not. I think when we built our home, they told us not to go above 35 feet high.
Yeah,
That was the regulations, we followed it.
sure.
So I think that's not what we determined.
No, I understand,
Yeah,
but,
but-
you know, I know you want to sell it, but the fact that you're concerned about
Right.
the environment is a
Yeah.
good thing from
Right.
my point of view,
Def-
and I was telling you why.
Thank you.
Yes.
All set?
Yep.
Okay. Two things. One, Catherine, can we, for final, come up with a description to go in the planning commission findings that says this, we feel this meets the PUD design points because I think it's there, but if we did that
At
for
the-
previous.
At the final, the next stage.
Yeah, I don't
add it.
think we need to hold it up for tonight. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that we did that for some of the previous ones. If we can just sort of identify
Yep.
why we feel it meets this, it'll just make it easier down the road. And two, let's go back and touch on the wells again, just to confirm what has to be done. What steps do you need to go through now for the well verification? Is it strictly research on your part? What do you need to do in order to get the
Approval?
approvals for those?
Or the state?
Yeah.
Maybe nothing. I mean, they're far enough apart, generally speaking. If wells are 200 feet apart, the state doesn't consider interference. There's single family, not only single family, I don't remember the threshold for, it's a gallon per day thing, but until you get up to a fairly high gallon per day demand, multifamily, for instance, and the potential, that the state would ask you to look at impacts from one well to the other comes into play. I don't believe that will be the case on this project because the wells are far enough apart, not only within the project, but outside of with the neighboring wells as well.
So is there still an approval process, or is it basically you meet the criteria and you get the approval? And I just want to make sure,
We'll submit this set of plans to the state. They'll
Yep.
look at wastewater, the wastewater designs and the well locations, and offer an opinion.
Okay.
Well, they issue a permit.
well, where I'm
You might
going
have
with that is I'd actually like to, let me go back down to the condition. I'll push back on Public Works a little bit on this, recognizing their concern. I think all we ask for is the fact confirmation that there's approval from the state. I mean, they're asking for details in 5. I think it's simply a matter of getting acknowledgement that the state approvals were issued for these wells. We don't. I mean, I'm just wondering, how can we ask for something that we have no jurisdiction over at this point in time?
Well, and to further put a point on that, Dustin, you can't, the applicant has no way of certifying issues with well yields until the wells are drilled. So it's a moot point. This should be in the same category as wastewater. This is out of our purview and out of Public Works purview. And if the state issues the permit, that's the state's purview, and they won't know well yields until they drill them.
And we put conditions, all state permits are required prior to issuance of a building permit. So
maybe with this instead is captured in our findings is that the planning commission recognizes that the state has purview over well water and wastewater, and that the approvals will be captured in whatever condition where you talk about all conditions of approval need to apply.
Yeah.
Wherever we've got in there the boilerplate language for
Yep.
approvals. I'm hesitant I'm hesitant to go above and beyond and start calling out at this point, that which we have no purview on. We've had, I think in West Sleepy Hollow, other areas where this has come in and we have not weighed in on it because it's not been our purview. West Sleepy Hollow more than once.
Brigham Hill Lane, more than one.
I think unless Public Works wants to bring this back within town purview, away from state, then I don't think we can put a condition in there that requires anything other than confirmation of state approval. My 2 cents.
That makes sense.
Okay, we have not closed the public hearing yet. Does anyone have any other questions in the audience? Questions or comments? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion, we close the public hearing.
A second.
Moved by Patty, seconded by John. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Public hearing is closed. Commissioners, thoughts, questions, comments? Anybody ready to make a motion? And I think we can do this as a group effort with staff helping us make sure we capture the points.
I can try.
Go for it.
Okay. So I make a motion of Neges and Wanta Gutema, the proposal for an 8-unit, 5-lot planned unit development residential PUD-R on a 37.8 acre parcel located at 137 Towers Road in agricultural, residential, low-density residential, and scenic resource protection overlay zones, tax map 14, parcel 39-11, be continued on the grounds that we're waiting to hear from the approval from the state, since we have no purview on what to do with the wastewater and water situation.
You sure you want to move to continue?
Well, don't we have to wait?
No.
Nope.
Oh,
We have another round. This is the preliminary.
oh, this is just preliminary. Okay, that's right. That's the beginning of this preliminary. So
I'll
It
just
would be-
capture what you said and make it,
It's just like a motion to approve preliminary was what we're looking.
oh, okay. Then I make a motion to approve what I just said, which is the preliminary plan.
Okay, there were a number of items that were called out.
subject to the findings and conditions. With what changes do you want to call out?
Okay, subject and conditions to the findings of, well, what's that?
We could say that we don't have
We don't have purview of the wells or the wastewater or even stormwater and the details where these retention ponds and basins are going, how they're going to function, where they're going to be.
So to help on condition 3A, that was the question about building elevations for all new structures.
Oh, yes, yes.
This was one, David, you had a suggestion for this.
Yeah, so why don't I second it so that we can have discussion and offer a friendly amendment that 3A be changed to typical building elevations. I'm fine with leaving building elevations for all lots, Doug, knowing that if you just make them the setback, I think you'll be able to achieve what you need to achieve. I would recommend a friendly amendment to strike condition 5 completely from the conditions, and we'll put something in the planning commission findings about the wells.
And Doug had an addition to 3F. There's an additional sheet.
C805.
Sure.
Okay, I agree with all that. Add that all in there.
Okay. And then under additional findings, we would be maybe making a request to include statements for final that outline why we feel this meets the PUD standards. And the language that water and waste are outside of our purview.
Okay.
Those are
The reason it's a PUD is because it has to be within because it's part of the Scenic Resource Protection Overlay District. We are making sure that we're not near any wetlands or corridors for wildlife. We're preserving the views, and then what I said about the wells earlier, we don't have any purview to decide, what the rules are with the well depth, the catch basins, the wastewater and wastewater treatment and wastewater collection pond.
May I ask a clarifying question?
No, I think you're looping a number of things in, though. I think it's simply a matter of we don't have purviews over wells, or
I said that. I said we don't have purview over the wells, figuring out the depth of the wells, the
But
catch basin retention
you
ponds.
started going into retention ponds and catch basins and so forth. That's not part of this.
Oh, it's not, okay.
So that, again, I think if we limit it to wells
Just wells, okay.
in this, because that's the contention point in this application.
Is it wells and wastewater or just wells? It's just wells, okay.
Yeah, I think we want the planning commission findings to acknowledge that the neighbors in public raised concerns over the wells, and that the planning commission acknowledged that the state is responsible for permitting all potable water systems, and that a permit will be issued. And I think it's as simple as that. And then while we acknowledge the concerns, it's out of our purview.
Say exactly what he said and just strike the paragraph, what I said before.
All good.
And I think the details of PUD application really was just to pick up what we had in other apps and not necessarily try to craft it for preliminary, but just note that we would be including those details for final. And then we can let staff craft that to meet the actual requirements. And again, that's more to start helping us set the stage to fine tuning how these are all going to be used or not used in the future.
And
Say
Patty,
what he said
and
for
Patty, with
the
your-
PUD, because he said PUD to me and I didn't know how elaborate I had to go.
So I will capture the typical with the points you made.
Yeah,
And we can amend it if you don't like it when you see it with the.
Well, this also can go into the final.
Right.
Some of that stuff can just be noted that
And
this
you're
is,
fine.
we want this for
Right.
final sort of thing. And that way,
I think
does
we're
that
good.
clarify it?
Yeah.
Okay. Patty, you good with all the discussion back and forth?
Yes, thank you for all your help.
David, you good with where we're at?
Yes, sir.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for coming in. Okay. Next item on our agenda are the minutes from when?
November 10th.
November 10th. Okay, thank you.
I'll move approval of those.
Who's going, David?
Yep.
Shoot.
No, you're on.
No, you.
No, you.
Okay, David first, Shu second.
I'll second it then.
Okay.
Subject to what, David? I missed that ruffle noise with your motion.
It all looks fantastic.
Thank
So-
you. No changes.
I make that call. They just make the motion.
Oh, sorry.
Sharon, here, you want this? Does anyone want to offer any amendments to the minutes as presented? And this is the copy, this has the update. Dialed in on, okay. None? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes carry 7-0. Doug, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if people are going to talk, close it. Thanks.
You guys are like brothers. Thanks for helping me.
So, Catherine, you want to talk about the modernization grant?
I do. So I apologize for just sending something over this afternoon. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at it or not. That's okay if you didn't. The thought about bringing this to you today is that we've been doing some work with the Regional Planning Commission, and we all thought we just wanted to make sure you heard where we were heading and were okay with the direction we were heading. So just a reminder, this project is to look at potential increased development in our sewer core outside of ETC next area. So we're thinking, you can picture our sewer core. It's pretty big. It goes from Route 15 almost down to Simon's where the Dunkin' Donuts is, over onto Sand Hill Road and down 117, and then over off of Susie Wilson Pinecrest Drive, as well as Colchester Road. So kind of those sort of general areas. Oh, I mean, it fills in behind the ETC next area as well too. Yeah. So in our conversations with the Regional Planning Commission, and in line with the grant, we were wanting to potentially increase density in those areas, and look at models or scenarios of what development could look like if we were to increase density. So we wanted to get a picture of physically what it would look like. We also need to get an idea of, will our existing sewer capacity work? Like if we increase it too much, we will run out of capacity. So just so we're working directly with Public Works on this, which is great. I don't think we've always done that in the past, or maybe spottily. So we have chosen 3 areas to look at, and this doesn't mean this is the only areas where we would see changes, but these are the areas where we're just going to be doing the modeling. And so one is the Colchester Road neighborhood. I could actually bring up the map to show you. And maybe while I'm doing that, what we're going to be modeling, it's through ArcGIS Urban, is the existing conditions, PUD conditions, so existing PUD conditions, and then looking at the dimensional standards that are within the Enabling Better Places guide that was approved by the state. So there are 3 different types of densities, essentially, or districts. So one is a neighborhood zoning district. One is a downtown district, and a town center district. So we'll be using the standards that are in that guide so that shows coverage, setbacks, building heights, all these things. So we can input that information in to build out some models for what the development could look like. I hope that explains it a little bit.
Sounds a lot like the discussions we had over the center, the ETC area.
Yeah.
Both the modeling that we talked about there.
Yeah. So
What was the third thing? You said neighborhood district, town center. What was the other one?
Downtown,
Neighborhood district and center district.
town center district,
No, neighborhood district, town center, and there was one more.
downtown.
Oh, downtown.
So here's the map of the the Susie Wilson, Colchester Road, Pinecrest areas that we're looking at. So where my cursor is all over the place. It's like really delayed.
Yep.
But where it is, that's Susie Wilson Road. So we're looking at that red area. And then we're looking at below it in that blue area, that's the Pinecrest Drive area, and then the pink, which is over on Colchester Road. And then wanted to look in some other area of town. So we're looking at the Route 15 study area.
This is to increase density?
This is to increase density, yeah. And so just to be clear, this doesn't mean we're going to be changing zoning to do this, but we could.
Right. Just what's
What's possible, exactly. So
Question, Catherine?
yes.
So I assume because you're working with Public Works that it also takes into account existing capacity and what would potentially be needed for infrastructure upgrades to handle increased density?
Exactly.
Okay, perfect.
Yep. Yep. That was really important to make sure we were being realistic in it, and not setting us up for failure, which I think was an issue with the ETC Next plan, right? There was concern needed to coordinate with Public Works on that. So looks like my little dialogue box is kind of in the way here, but
Explain what will.
yeah, I'm trying to. So you can see at the bottom it has Route 15. So that's sort of in the bottom, and then Sand Hill Road goes along here. This is Sand Hill where my cursor is.
There's the Levine Road is the far right, the lower right.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and this is Browns River Road up here. So this is the elementary school. And going over to Irene Avenue, all the way down the Route 15 corridor. This is all within the sewer core
You need
area.
to watch that
That's
screen because
great.
you're talking ahead of it.
Oh, I hate that. Yeah, and it disappears off of there too, doesn't it? I don't have that little, I can't see me on my screen. Thank you very much. I'm glad.
now you're the person.
So that's just an area that they're looking at as potential.
It is. So we wanted to get a couple different areas of town, not just all over in the like the Pinecrest Drive, Susie Wilson quarter, which is initially what was proposed. And we were like, well, hey, we got to look at another part of town. So we're looking at, like I mentioned, modeling what the existing conditions would allow, what PUD standards would allow, and then using those different neighborhood types appropriately applied, what that would look like. So like the Susie Wilson Road would be a downtown, where this area on Route 15 is considered the neighborhood
District.
See, in order to build that today, the whole thing would have to be a PUD. Because they're all quarter acre lots, primarily quarter acre lots, and there's no way that we would be able to do that with our current regulations.
But I think it's good because it'll increase walkability. It'll make sure our sidewalks get plowed. Because, we're trying to get people to use cars less. It'll cause us to have better infrastructure for, not
With
just
more
one mode of,
density, you mean?
yeah.
But
Yeah, even if it's more PUDs, it's
I guess
okay.
the question I had over that is most of that already is built out.
It is built out. So the one thing for us to consider, this model can do, this is what I'm showing here, existing buildings being demolished. So it can show like what would happen if we had the blank slate and then just put in, whatever density we wanted, or we merge lots. And so you have a bigger lot, then you can make the development happen. We realize though too, when you propose these things, people could get a little testy, thinking like this is Pinecrest Drive. If we demolish Ray's Seafood, people might get upset. So, and we're not proposing to demolish Ray's
right.
Seafood, but it'll appear that we are.
Right.
And so we are not. This is just a model to give us an idea of what we could see.
And again, this is all only those areas that are currently in the sewer core.
Correct. Right. No proposed extension of the sewer core or amendment to it.
That's the easiest way to go. Instead
Well,
of,
I wonder because we've got the area on the north side of 15 opposite the Maple Field.
Chase. Oh, the Maple Field.
Not
Oh,
back that way.
that way. Yep.
That's
Not
primed for it. It's outside of the sewer core, but it's primed for it. It's got the sewer capacity. It's got the sewer line. So it's like the infrastructure is right up to it. And it's like that would be interesting to see if we could expand. Not necessarily. I mean, if we're looking at adding capacity to an existing place already there.
Yeah.
But it also makes sense to take some of the added capacity to an area that is looking for it or primed for it. But that breaks the sewer core up.
Right.
Follow.
So one question is the, what you are calling the west area of, or the north area of the town center?
Yeah.
Is that currently in the sewer core or not?
What I just
No.
mentioned is not in the sewer core.
Okay,
What Catherine was talking about, those areas are in the sewer, existing.
okay,
Already in there.
okay, so that's why you're not talking about that area.
Right. Yeah, we considered it, but because it's not in the sewer core, it's less realistic that it would happen, where these changes could happen sooner.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it and just knowing that it's not, so that's a huge hurdle to get over.
Yeah.
But there's no demolition and rebuild that's required. It would be like, it's like Williston doing Taft's Corners. We'd be able to design
that
it.
blank slate.
It would be a blank slate that could be built up to whatever standard.
Right.
And that capacity that we're looking to leverage in these areas where we want to redevelop, we wouldn't need to try to squeeze it in. We could just put it on that spot.
And the family that owns that, most of that parcel, they were required to put in a line that goes over there.
Yeah, they've got the infrastructure would accept the expansion beyond the Maplefield parcel. They have the infrastructure to be able to. Again, that's not trying to accommodate an individual, but if we're looking, it's just an interesting. It would be, if we were going to expand, that would be a logical expansion place,
Right.
because it's there, it's primed, and it could be a blank slate.
Right. Agreed. And this is a different project because we've already determined that we're working within the existing sewer core. And the idea is really was to think about infill development. And so where you have either underdeveloped lots or vacant lots, or maybe older homes that might not stay. So how can we try to create a better neighborhood, using that guide, enabling better places. So the idea, and like this picture shows, like if you had maximum building height of 60 feet, 100% lot coverage, and no setbacks in the front and small in the sides, you could have something like this, and it wouldn't be a block like this, but like that's a big change in what's there now, on Pinecrest. And I don't think we would see that, but we could be looking at that kind of development just in this scenario, and it looks imposing. We don't think this will happen. But if we also look at merging lots together too, you could see even bigger structures.
Well, I have a question. How far up towards Maplefield feels like what he was talking about is the sewer core already in place?
It's right
along
to the
15.
circ.
Oh, okay. Because just along 15, it looks like missing teeth. And if we had that infill development, it would make it flow so much better and make it a gateway, to our beautiful town. But right now it looks like missing teeth. It just looks bad. So I think it's a good project to just go where the sewer core is. Because to fill those spaces in first, get rid of the missing teeth, and then we can do what he says, expand the sewer core.
Don't see what I says. I'm just asking a question. I'm not,
No, I know,
don't ever say that. Speak for yourself on that. Seriously.
No, I mean, I like your idea too, but
It's not it. But again, it's just, I think there's risk benefit in everything, right? If you're talking infill, you're going to change the character of the town. And we've heard so many times, we hear people don't want.
That's right.
I mean, how many times have we had a development come in and people say, I came from New Jersey, I don't want that.
Right.
And I mean, so I think there's a balance.
And the,
Right. So that's why we thought we should
Yeah.
bring this to you. And should we back it off, or is there? In the end, after this, all the modeling is done, we're gonna have to share it with the public, and then if we want to change our zoning, we're gonna have to sell it to the public. Get people on board with this is a good idea, assuming it is a good idea, of course. But
a lot of work was done over the past 5 years with coming up with the town plan.
the ETC next
Yeah.
plan, yeah, for sure.
And, but it wasn't just, I mean, it was centered on that, but a lot of what we did as part of that was to have public hearings and have people come in, and we wrote all over the pictures and everything else. We had people write their comments, and then we did the monkey survey and all of that. And so we're pretty clear, and people were pretty clear about what they wanted to see.
Sure.
And what you're talking about is not what they wanted to see.
Well, this is a different part of town, and we're talking about different development, and there would be public outreach and involvement. So this is not going ahead without that process.
So Catherine, I think from my point of view, I think it's good to go forward to this, because even if we come up with, at the end of the day, we say we don't want this, we'll know. And we'll do the modeling will allow us to see, a whole lot better than just, I think it's going to look like that, or I think it's going to look like this. So I think the modeling is a good approach, period.
Mm-hmm.
We did this a number of years ago with a transit complex that before Lowe's went in, and we modeled it and we walked away from it. I mean, it didn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
That might have changed in today's environment, but
right. Right. I think that's a good point. It's, and you could also think that, okay, well, here's what the modeling shows, to the extreme, and what if we cut it back by half, or and we made it fit more the context, maybe. So
I think that would be, I think, go for it. I mean, whatever we can get out of this. We shouldn't go into it with the expectation of that's where we're going to be. We should go into, I think this is what we could get to, and then I think we would find that people don't want to go that far.
Mm-hmm.
It's just fun to throw it. All we're doing now is just throwing out ideas. That's all.
Just a couple points. I know Dave has to leave in a few minutes, and I want to pull the plug by 8:30 tonight. So I think, do you need more from us on that?
I'm good.
Do you guys online have comments or questions on this?
I do not.
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. The other thing, and Dave, if you can hold on for a couple minutes, the charter changes.
Yes. Okay. So this information did get out to you a couple days ago, or maybe just yesterday. I forget when exactly. So just by way of brief introduction, there was a charter committee that was charged to take a look at the charter and make sure that we're fixing the things that are different now that we are separated from the city. And they kind of went in with an open eyes and said, we're going to make a bunch of changes. So these changes weren't shared with staff or really even the select board until Monday. So I had no idea that there were going to be these changes specific to the planning commission and the zoning board. So, what I shared with you is that the proposal is to eliminate the zoning board and add a DRB, and that changes the role then of the planning commission to strictly be doing long-term planning and bylaw updates, essentially. And the DRB would then be doing all of the development review. So right now the zoning board does a limited amount of development review. You guys do the majority of site plan and subdivisions, and they just do minor things. That would all get shifted to the DRB. The other proposal or part of that is that reducing the planning commission to 5 members. So what has been asked from the town manager is that I share this with you allow you to provide comments to me that I can gather them all together, and those will be sent to the select board. So it's not a done deal that this is happening. They seem, as of Monday, they seem to like that idea, though, the DRB change. Personally, I feel like the way the process worked wasn't right. There should have been consultation. There should have been a public process as well, and figuring out, do we really want to make this change? So the idea of saying, or maybe a charter change saying that there could be a DRB in the future, that to me sounds good, versus there will be a DRB in the future. There needs to be more discussion before there's a DRB. So whether or not we, off the table, whether or not we like a DRB, I will just, that's my opinion. So enough of me, and just wondering if you had any thoughts. You're all, the select board will be looking at this again at their next meeting, which is the 19th. And so they're open for comments to that point. Then they have to finalize it on the 3rd of June or 3rd of January. And then I believe there'll be a couple public hearings, so they can make changes before it actually gets put on the ballot for voting at town meeting.
Yeah.
And then it goes before the legislature after that for their approval.
So you're looking for comments
Here now. And I know we're running short on time, so if you have personal comments that you want to send to me, you're obviously more than welcome to go to the select board meeting coming up and voice your thoughts. I would say that, that if we can have kind of a unified vision of where we want to go with this, that would be good too.
If I could make a suggestion at this point, in for the sake of the evenings, which has gone longer than I had sort of hoped. But how about everyone send your thoughts on this to Catherine, and then if you're okay with it, I'd like to sit with Catherine and go through the list. I suspect there'll be a lot of consistency in questions and comments, and if there's anything that stands out, we can follow up with the individual asked, get clarification.
Yep.
But from that, put together a
package
for the select board.
Yep. And I also would be more than happy to answer any questions that you all have individually too, if you want some clarification of what is a DRB and how does it change for the planning commission, and maybe even some background of discussions that have happened in the past.
Justin, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because you've been on this board a really long time, do you think because the population has grown, and like Williston, I know they have a DRB, and so the Williston planning people, the planning commission just does the planning, and then the DRB does a lot of the stuff that we're doing with
all of it, actually.
Yeah. I'm just asking, Dustin, do you see a big shift in the population all the time that you've been on this board, where you think that's something that we need because we're growing like Williston, maybe? I'm just wondering his perspective, because he's been on this for a long time.
So is Dave.
I'm asking you.
In my mind, there are questions yet to be answered, such as, are we trying to solve a problem? That's the first thing that comes to mind. I don't know that there's a problem to solve. So if we're not solving a problem, what are we trying to do by this shift? Is the DRB giving us a clear advantage over planning commission that does planning and applications? We only have one set of staff, so the staff is still going to be the same doing the work unless we're expanding the staff. So we don't have a separate staff to work on planning and work on applications. It's a consistent group. So are we trying to solve a problem, or are we trying to move into a status that's similar to the neighboring community? So are we looking to be for consistency across the county? Trying to solve a problem, or what? I don't know the answer to that. So I don't see a driver. I don't understand the driver to move from the model that we have.
What's the advantage?
Correct.
I just, because you've been on it a long time. I was curious.
I think we've done a good amount of work, both in planning and application review. And I think the two go together. You do one and you learn about the other, whichever way you look at it. Planning helps you do application review. Application review helps you do planning. So I don't see them yet being a big advantage being separated. I don't know that we have so many applications come through that we can't do planning. So anyways, I think there's questions to be answered.
I mean, I worked on the committee that came up with some of those suggestions if we were going to join
The merger.
Yeah. And I mean, the theory behind it is that the current planning commission doesn't have a lot of time to focus on the long range planning. And so that's why having a planning commission do that. I mean, that's the theory behind it. And then the DRB would focus on applications and all of that.
So,
and you know, now we're actually smaller. So then what that committee was working toward, because it was working toward what would we
one
do?
planning commission, 2 DRBs is what it was going to have been.
Yes, and it would be the equal number of people from both communities to serve on the planning commission, and 2 DRBs, because the two parts of the community are quite different in what their vision for their part of the community is, which is why I have concerns about infill and making big buildings out of 2 small buildings or whatever, because you know, right now with the housing situation, what you're talking about eliminating and making into, you know, bigger complexes, it's those small houses like the one that I live in now that we need more of. They're the ones that are more affordable. It's a home, they have a yard. It's what people want when they get into their first home. And you know, and that's something that most people could afford. And I know, you know, just from the number of requests I get from realtors of, you know, I'm interested in selling. You know, so
that goes to
that's another whole issue.
I think the modeling on that would be back to that. But
Yeah.
The other thing on this is the numbers. You know, why the numbers? If you have a smaller group, you're more susceptible to having failure points of not being able enough people to make the decisions. Does that mean that we want to go down to having a minimum of 3 to make a vote? That seems, you know, we haven't had any issues with having a board of 7 with a minimum of 4. We have 4, we can make a decision. It just doesn't seem like there's again, what's the driver? I understand that there was a driver when we were doing a merger, potentially. But are we at a point where we need to? Is there a need for this, or is this just a want? I guess is a sort of a question mark.
Yep.
So, but with that, if everybody can take some time over the next day or so and get thoughts to Catherine, then we can maybe collate those comments and see what they look like.
Yeah, so just send them directly and not the group.
Yep.
I'll be out of town, but I'll try to text you.
Does that work, John? Josh? Can't tell if Tom's still on it.
Yep, I'm here. That sounds good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
I had one really quick update. The town plan working group has currently scheduled 5, maybe 6 sort of community vision hearings to gather input from people on what they would like to see on the upcoming town plan. Those are scheduled. I can send you the dates, or Catherine probably has them right there, in early January, various locations throughout town based on getting a good geographical distribution. So that's moving forward. We've already come up with sort of, I think I told you at a previous meeting, within the working group itself, what we want to do in terms of various aspects of town, and we're going to see what the town thinks. Ideally, we'll be sending out postcards to invite people to those. And then we'll collate all of the input we get and take it from there.
Good. Progress. Okay. Anything else? Okay, let's have a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.